We're sure you've been asked, how many kids is too much? 3 kids? 4? How about 69? Is that enough children? The Guinness World Record for the most prolific mother ever belongs to the wife of Fyodor Wasiliev, who lived in Russia in the early mid-1700s. Her name has been lost to history, but the legend of her 69 children was not. That's right, 69 children born from a single woman. If you're thinking it's impossible for one woman to birth 69 human beings, you wouldn't be the first to question this story's legitimacy. But if there is even a chance of this story being true, then it's certainly one we want to look into. The evidence of this legendary tale comes from an issue of the Gentleman's Magazine in 1783, in which it documents a letter from an English merchant to his family in England. In the letter, the merchant explained that he had met a man from Moscow who had, by one wife, 4 sets of quadruplets, 7 sets of triplets, and 16 pairs of twins. Now, if you tuned out now and thought this story couldn't be true after hearing that, we wouldn't blame you. But what's interesting about the account of multiple sets of twins, triplets, and quadruplets is that this distinction, as ridiculous as it sounds, actually gives the record more integrity. If the letter stated that the wife gave birth on 69 separate occasions, we would know it wasn't credible, because that would be scientifically impossible. The only way one woman could birth so many children in one lifetime is if she was able to pump out multiple at a time. Sorry for that imagery. So, this absurd account of multiple sets of children leads us to believe that this insane tale might just be true after all. It's also important to note that triplets and quadruplets are birthed after shorter than average terms. Scientists have indicated that the woman most likely had a genetic predisposition to hyperovulate, or in other words, release multiple eggs in one cycle. This condition would make the numbers seem more likely, although it's still a rather unlikely story. Assuming the woman gave birth to all of her children before the age of 40, she would have been pregnant for 18 out of those 40 years. That's about half of her life carrying around multiple life forms in her belly. If that's not crazy enough, it's also documented that Fyodor Wasiliev, the husband who fathered those 69 children, married a second time, and with his second wife, he had 18 other children. His second wife was said to have 6 pairs of twins and 2 sets of triplets. In total, Wasiliev is believed to have fathered 87 children. Of course, the 1700s were a lot different than the way things are now. But let's imagine someone had to parent 87 children today, in the United States for example. The Department of Agriculture states that the average estimated cost it takes to raise a child through the age of 17 is $233,610, or about $14,000 annually. Multiply that by 87, and it would cost you $20,324,000, or $1.2 million a year to raise 87 children. Imagine the faces in the window when you pull up in one of your vans to the McDonald's drive-thru after ordering 87 McChickens. We'd suggest that if you're looking to break a Guinness World Record, you might want to look for a cheaper one. Or just bank on getting your own reality TV show on TLC. Maybe pursue another world record instead. Perhaps try fitting the most marshmallows in your mouth at once. Should be more cost-effective. This crazy story got us thinking about other records concerning childbirth. So we looked into some more outrageous stories. Just this year, an article was written about an American woman in Indianapolis who gave birth to 17 babies at once. The article went on to explain that Catherine Bridges and her husband used medical assistance from a fertility clinic after years of trying to get pregnant. Needless to say, the fertility clinic did its job, as Catherine birthed 17 identical baby boys. The names of the boys were reported as follows: James, Jacob, Jared, Jarvis, Jason, Jeffrey, Jeremy, Jerome, Jesse, Jimmy, Joachim, Jonathan, Jonas, Joseph, Julian, Jimbo, and Darth. Yes, 16 identical boys with names starting with J and one named Darth. We're not super sure how that's going to play out, but we wish them the best. Or at least, we would wish them the best if it were all true. As it turns out, the whole thing was just a hoax, and the article was completely made up. There have been pregnancies in which 9 fetuses have developed, but in all of those cases, only a few of the babies were born. And even the ones that did tragically passed away after just a few days. The youngest woman to ever give birth to a child was only 5 years and 7 months old. Lena Medina is a Peruvian woman born in September of 1933. One day, her parents took her to the hospital thinking their daughter had developed a tumor in her stomach, only to find out she was pregnant. A month and a half later, she gave birth to a healthy baby boy via a cesarean section. The surgery was necessary due to how small her pelvis was. When the doctors performed the surgery, they saw that Lena already had fully mature sexual organs at just 5 years old. Obviously, there were concerns about who impregnated the young girl, but details from the family were never given. Lena's father was arrested for being accused of sexual abuse, but no evidence was found and no one was ever charged. Lena's son was named Geraldo after the doctor that had performed the procedure. The boy was told that Lena was his sister until age 10, when they told him the truth, that she was actually his mother. Many scientific organizations offered lump sums of money to study Lena, but for the most part, her and her family refused. In 1972, Lena had a second son. The births of her only 2 children are 33 years apart. Geraldo was 33 when his brother was born. Lena is 84 years old today. Her son Geraldo passed away at age 40 in 1979. A woman by the name of Elizabeth Ann Buttle holds a rather interesting record herself. At the age of just 19, she gave birth to her daughter, Belinda, then quit having kids for a very long time. 41 years after the birth of her daughter, Buttle gave birth to her son at the age of 60. Buttle had to tell the doctors she was 49 in order to be eligible for IVF, even though she was 59 at the time of her second conception. Buttle holds the record of having the longest interval between the births of her 2 children. Imagine having a biological older sister that's 41 years older than you are. Stacey Harold is another woman with an amazing pregnancy story. She stands at just 2 feet 4 and holds the title of being the world's smallest mother. Doctors warned her that her pregnancy would result in a number of risks for her and her children. Due to her small stature, a baby in the womb could have ended up invading space in the stomach, already occupied by organs. Normally, when a baby kicks while inside of her mother, it's a joyous sign of life. But for Harold, it could have meant dislocation of a vital organ. Another dangerous aspect of a little person having a pregnancy is the addition of all the baby weight. Extra weight for someone of this size results in detrimental stress on the joints and bones, and weight from a pregnancy simply cannot be prevented. Despite all odds, Harold ended up having 3 healthy babies, and she plans to have more in the future. We mentioned the world's youngest mother, but what about the oldest woman to ever give birth? Maria Carmen gave a natural birth when she was 67 years old and holds the record for the oldest natural birth. Unless you believe the biblical story of Sarah, who is said to have given birth to her son Isaac at age 91 after years of being barren. Moving on from natural births, a woman named Rahou Devi Lahan became pregnant after an IVF treatment at the age of 68. IVF stands for in vitro fertilization and is the process where an egg and sperm are combined outside of the body, then surgically put in the woman for pregnancy. Despite all of the controversy that came with her decision to have a child at such an old age, this pregnancy made her the world's oldest first-time mother. Lohan gave birth to her first child at the age of 69. Since the birth, she stated that her daughter has made her stronger and helped her live longer. We're glad to hear that, but we hope the child is doing okay too. We've seen that having to hold a baby in the womb can really slow down your birth rate, even if you're birthing multiple at a time. So, if 69 is the most children ever born of one woman, what's the most ever born of one man? Historians believe that Moulay Ismail, the last Sharifan emperor of Morocco, holds this record. With the help of around 500 wives, Moulay Ismail was said to have left around 800 heirs. That's right, 800 children from one man. You think they all got quality time with their dad? We don't think so either. What about the oldest baby? Oldest baby, as in the baby that spent the most time in the womb, not your great aunt that complains about everything. Beulah Hunter got pregnant in March of 1944 and would remain pregnant for 375 days. After a year of pregnancy, her baby finally came out, setting the world record for the oldest baby. The baby was perfectly healthy. The doctors were amazed, and all they could say was that the baby just grew at an exceptionally slow rate for no reason in particular. Hey, we've all been there. Sometimes you just don't want to leave your womb. How about the oldest man to ever have a kid? An Australian man had his last child when he was 93 years old. He would live to see that child's 7th birthday and his 100th. What about the youngest grandfather? Fail Wright was just 29 when his son that he had when he was 14 years old had a child of his own. Imagine having a kid at 14 years of age, regretting it, then finding out 14 years later that your son did the exact same thing. And the world's youngest grandmother? At the age of 8, Mum Z became a mother, and at 17, a grandmother. The father to both children was Chief Akiri. Akiri was the leader of a tribe in Nigeria and clearly not one of morals. Here is another incredible pregnancy story that we think you'll find interesting. Sarah Connell of Chicago tried to have a child for years. Tragically, she had 2 failed pregnancies and eventually stopped ovulating before she could successfully give birth. Despite these obstacles, she was still determined to have a child. In a miraculous and heartwarming gesture, her own mother, Christine Casey, offered to serve as a surrogate mother for her daughter. A copious amount of tests were performed to determine whether the 61-year-old was safe enough to carry a baby, and once the tests were satisfied, the doctors cleared her for a postmenopausal birth. The baby was born less than a year later. Needless to say, this 61-year-old is the first woman to ever give birth to her own grandson. So, what's the most shocking record on this list? What would you do if you had 69 children? Would you rather have a 14-year-old father or a 93-year-old father? Let us know in the comment section below. And as always, thanks for watching this top trending video.